Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you all. So today I'm coming back to Branded Despia, minus the tier limits. We recently covered a 60 card variant of Branded tier limits, which we worked on with our patron Onslaught. It was very cool. I liked that deck a lot. And playing it really made me want to come back to 60 card Branded Despia as well. This is, I'm pretty sure, unchanged from my Season 17 deck profile. I really like this particular style of playing Despia with 60 cards. Ever since I kind of made that switch, it's funny. I find that happening with so many different decks, right? It has happened now with Despia. It happened with Ad Emancipator. It happened with Dragon Link, where initially I played a more, I guess, toned down, in a way, 40 card build, but then eventually it's like, there's so many tech options I want to play. I'll just play all of them in grass. And that is absolutely the case here with Branded Despia. One of the cool things I like about going up to 60 cards with this deck in particular is the ability to play every cool piece of support in both the Despian and Branded archetypes that you normally don't have room for in a 40 card build. Stuff like Comedy, Dramaturge. I love this card. This might be my favorite Despia card. This card is so powerful that I have often thought about trying to go out of my way to make room for it in even 40 card builds. Just not even for the effect, the negating effect is obviously very good, but just being able to put out a free 3k body while you're fusing makes it so easy to end duels with this deck, so unbelievably easy. But there's also stuff like the Theater is pretty good, Branded Lost plus the Mercourier is pretty good to have. The one kit we have here, this is more just in case stuff gets milled and we want to search not only from our deck but our graveyard as well. And then of course also having more ways to search Branded Fusion is never bad either. Yeah, I've been loving this list and I had a ton of fun playing it on ladder. I really underestimate how much I like this deck in this current meta, just because, it's if you're going to be playing a fusion deck, if you're going to be playing Branded in general, you probably should just be playing tier elements, and it's one of those situations where it's the best Branded deck is Branded tier elements, but Branded tier elements is definitely not the best tier elements deck. So Branded in a way, as a package, as a deck, as a whole, gets overshadowed a lot in this meta, but that doesn't mean it's bad by any means. And I think this deck still has a lot of potential just as a tier 3 deck even in this tier limits meta. I think the reason we just don't see it more often is just because it doesn't get proper representation. But playing this deck on ladder, I can tell you, and this is pre-Diamond 1, so there's a lot of all the various shenanigans running around. But playing this deck on ladder, I definitely feel very good about it. I feel very good about just playing it in general, even in this meta. I think it's really easy. I've said this before, mostly when talking about Sprite Punk, but I think it's really easy to think to yourself right now, if I'm not playing tier elements, I need to be playing something like Exo or Flow that directly counters them, or something that can play Dimension Shifter, but that's not necessarily true. You can absolutely still experience success in this meta with a deck like this. Let's see. One thing I would like to add to this deck potentially is the third Imperm, just because I really like Infinite Impermanence in this meta. Potentially a third Super Poly as well, just because, again, I really like Super Poly. I mean, not just particularly in this meta, but just in general. And the card is at 3 now. I still only have 2 copies, but it is at 3. I think the main culprits to drop, if I were to include something like that, would probably be the Allures, but I also really like Allure of Darkness, not only for its ability to smooth out our draws and make them overall more consistent, but, obviously banishing a Despian Tragedy off of it is really good, so, and it's not hard to have targets for Allure even outside of Despian Tragedy, because obviously we're not only playing a ton of dark monsters, but ways to search them as well. I also really like the Frightfur package. One of the things that I'm kind of it's a shame in the tier limit set is that you don't have room for it. I think the Frightfur Poly package in regular Branded Despia is still super duper good. And in the 60 card deck, we get to max out on both the Patchworks and the Edge Imp Chain. Still only playing 2 Polymerization though. I've thought about playing a third. This is yet another card that I'm playing 2 of in this deck that I've thought about playing a third, but not only do we not really have the room, but also it's not super necessary either. I don't think so. One thing I will say I've kind of been thinking about cutting from the main deck is the Albion. I don't know, the ability to send the Branded Retribution to the graveyard is pretty good sometimes, but I will say overall I've been slightly underwhelmed by Albion the Shrouded Dragon, just its presence overall in the deck. I know that's weird. I know a lot of Branded Despia players really like the card. I don't think it's bad by any means. I just say it tends not to do enough. But I guess to be fair, its main function here is really just to get milled and not even using the effects from in hand. The idea being that if it gets milled, and also like a Branded Fusion does, we can potentially use Albion to send Branded Retribution and then get the fusion back and make plays with it. So extra deck. Extra deck. I have also been thinking about making some changes. Mainly, I kind of want Avalon back in. I always go so back and forth on this deck's extra deck. Pretty much between the 15 cards you're seeing here and then also Alba Lenatus as well. Basically, these 16 cards. I'm perpetually just taking one of these out, but then slotting it back in. Like, it's usually Ver Anaconda I'm taking out, and I'll try an Alba Lenatus, but then I'm like, no, let's see if Ver Anaconda is useful. But then I'm like, oh, I had a game where, like, see, that's the thing, too, is, like, it's never, like, necessary. I've never had a game where I'm like, oh, I need Alba Lenatus. So I've never really had a game like, oh, I need Ver Anaconda. But I'll have games where I'm like, oh, it would be nice to have that. I mean, I have plays, but it would be nice. So I think maybe the real answer is to drop the second Guardian Chimera. Like, I can't tell you the last time I actually summoned it. In actual, like, Branded Despia meta, like, when the deck first came out, I think it was definitely more common to cycle through your stuff and play the second Guardian Chimera, but nowadays, I think it's been months since I've summoned it. I'll probably just end up dropping that next and putting the Alba Lenatus back in the extra deck, but for the time being, this is the list that we use to do some laddering up from Diamond 3 to Diamond 2. I've been taking my Diamond climb a lot more slow this season. Might not even reach Diamond 1 and would honestly be fine with that, just because, like, the games at Diamond 1 are so boring. People concede instantly, and there's not really... I'm only missing out on, like, 200 gems at this rate by not getting there. So if we get there, we do. If not, I'm not concerned about it. But yeah, I think that's going to pretty much do it as far as talking about the list here. So I'm going to go ahead and break it down card by card, as always as ever, and then we'll look at some gameplay. So we are playing 1 Despian Comedy, 3 Despian Tragedy, 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 3 Edge Imp Chain, 1 Fairy Tale Snow, 2 Fallen of Albaz, 2 Aluber the Jester of Despia, 1 Tri-Brigade Mercourier, 1 Springans Kitt, 2 Keldo the Sacred Protector, 3 Mudora the Sword Oracle, 2 Kelbek the Ancient Vanguard, 2 Agido the Ancient Sentinel, 1 Dramaturge of Despia, 1 Albion the Shrouded Dragon, 1 Ad Libitum of Despia, 2 Polymerization, 1 Foolish Burial, 3 Allure of Darkness, 2 That Grasslook Screener, 3 Frightfur Patchwork, 3 Branded Fusion, 1 Despia, Theater of the Branded, 1 Branded Lost, 2 Super Polymerization, 2 Call by the Grave, 2 Branded Opening, 2 Branded in Red, 2 Infinite Impermanence, 1 Branded Banishment, and then 1 Branded Retribution. That's going to do it for the main deck. For the extra deck, we're on 1 Mudragon of the Swamp, 1 Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, 1 Predaplant Dragostepelia, 2 Albion the Branded Dragon, 1 Despian Comedy, 2 Masquerade the Blazing Dragon, 2 Mirajade the Iceblade Dragon, 2 Libellion the Searing Dragon, 2 Guardian Chimera, and then finally Predaplant Vert Anaconda. So that is our list. Now let us look at some gameplay. Okay, so our first game for this video is going to be against... Care to take a guess? It's Tier Limits. Naturally. But, you know, always like to showcase our games against the deck to beat. So, looking at this hand right here, we definitely have our fair share of options. We opened Aluber Branded Fusion, as well as Ash Blossom and Callby, which is really nice. Even though our opponent has an Imperm here, that obviously does not matter because we still have the Branded Fusion. So we still get to set up some pretty standard turn 1 Branded Despia plays. And I was going to say, even if our opponent has something like Ash Blossom to stop us, we have the Callby. This is a little awkward if they happen to have Maxx 2. They could chain it at some point after this chain. Well, then they wouldn't get a draw, to be fair. So I guess even if they had Maxx, they would have had to have used it there, which I could have Ash Blossomed anyway before it got negated. So we really did just have, like, everything to stop them. So this is all pretty standard stuff. I imagine if you've played, you know, Master Duel within the last 6 months, you've probably seen this line at some point, using the Branded Fusion to send the Tragedy and the Albaz for Libellion, then discarding... I'll discard my Ash Blossom here because I can't use it during my opponent's turn anyway because of Callby, so... Gonna grab the Ad Libitum before making Mirror Jade. Ad Libitum was searched off of the Tragedy. Now we can use Mirror Jade, send Albion, banish the Aluber, and then pass it over to our opponent. During the in phase, Aluber will set Branded in red, and now we're all set up to not only play Guardian Chimera, but also sort of recycle our Mirror Jade here. So we're just gonna start off with a Rhino Heart. I'm going to actually immediately chain the Branded in red. This looks a little bit weird, but I think I might actually not go for Guardian Chimera in this situation. Normally you would, but against Branded Despia, or Branded Despia, against Tearlament, the destruction from the Guardian Chimera tends to not be as good as necessarily something like the negate from the Dragostepelia. So what I'm thinking here is my opponent already has relatively limited options in their hand because they only have 3 cards. So if I can both negate and then banish this Kitt close, I should be looking pretty good here. And wow, my opponent is just going to concede right then and there. I didn't even realize it was going to be that quick. But although this was a very quick duel, I did still think it was an important one to highlight because, you know, a lot of people, and, you know, myself to an extent included, I think have this mindset that, like, why would you play Branded Despia in this deck? There's a better fusion deck out there. It's Tearlaments. And why would you play Branded Despia without Tearlaments? That's just the best variant of that deck. And I made a similar comment at the start of this video, but again, one of my whole main points here is that even if the deck with Tearlaments might be more optimal, that doesn't discount what the deck without Tearlaments can do, or that is to say what regular Branded Despia can still do. Even in the face of a deck like Tearlaments, even though we only really had our kind of standard turn 1 play of just resolving a Branded Fusion and ending on Mirror Jade plus another fusion monster, usually Guardian Chimera, but in this case, again, we went for the Dragostepelia, that still caused our opponent to just snap concede. I think a lot of people would assume that that's not possible for a deck like Branded Despia to do, but really, you know, I've said this in every single meta, and it is very, very true. You can definitely get to Diamond 1. It's going to take longer sometimes, but you can definitely get to Diamond 1 with even a Rogue tier deck, or even sometimes below Rogue tier. Even casual decks can make it to Diamond 1. So the only real limitation is your ability to pilot a deck. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at some more duels that will go on at least a little bit longer than our Tearlament opponent lasted here. Alright, got another duel against Tearlaments. This one is definitely going to be, you know, more of a back and forth, or it's at least got a higher turn count, so we'll see. We're going to be taking the first turn once again here. Looking at our opening hand, definitely not bad at all. We opened Aluber and a couple of other relevant cards, namely the Branded opening, I suppose, but I'm going to go ahead and normal summon the Aluber. Opponent does not have a disruption for it, so I'm just going to grab and then activate the Branded Fusion. Once again, going for Albaz and Tragedy. Again, very standard Branded Despia stuff. Even though we are playing the 60-card deck, our line typically doesn't change too much, assuming we don't open anything too crazy. Here we actually get a free Dramaturge search off the Tragedy because we already have Ad Libitum in our hand. And now I'm going to be making the Mirror Jade once again. Once again, going to use Mirror Jade to banish the Aluber. That was something that when this deck first came out, I think not a lot of people really got. I think it's very counterintuitive to banish your own Aluber, but that is actually the right play. Oh, here my opponent's going to activate Harpy's Feather Duster, right? And it might seem really bad, but I can actually chain both of these cards. It's not even necessarily in optimal times to do so. I'm going to use the Branded opening to grab the Aluber out of the deck. And now, rather than make Guardian Chimera with Branded in red, once again, I'm just going to be making the Dragostepelia because my opponent doesn't have cards that I feel that I want to destroy. But this still puts a monster negate on the board. So now I get the Ad Libitum to get the Mirror Jade back, I get the Aluber search, and I've set up, again, a monster negate as well. Opponent's going to get to summon an Agido from hand here. That's relatively fine. It seems that they might be looking to go into some sort of a Zeus line, but we definitely have the tools to stop that from happening here. Mirror Jade is back once again. The ability is refreshed, so we can use it again. Opponent's got a Perla Rhino. Definitely annoying, especially as they go for Havnus, which usually means they already have Shiren and or Rhino Heart. Looks like they did in fact have both. Got a special Shiren, proccing the effects of both Rhino Heart and the Kelbek that they milled. We thankfully have the Keldo in our graveyard, so we get to use that to put back some of their stuff, including their Shuffler here. But I do still get the Kelbek mill. Kelbek mill unfortunately hit a lot of very relevant stuff. On our end, it hit, I guess, a Despain Tragedy at the very least. So, yeah, things might not be looking good here, but at the same time, I'm not, like, super duper worried. Oh, since my opponent's going to try to destroy the Dragostepelia anyway, I'm just going to use Despian Comedy just to tribute it and at least get, you know, a body on the board. Okay, looks like they're searching Pearl Rhino, Merly Effective Fuse. Here's the thing, right? My opponent activated both of these fusers in the same chain link, which I think was a misplay. Because now they have to go for... Yeah, they either have to go for Roll Close or Collide Heart. It looks like they're going for Roll Close using this Kickalos here. Oh, they're making Dragostepelia, actually. Which, yeah, that's the better call. Alright, Rhino Heart here is going to mill Havnus. That's the last one that hasn't activated. They are fusing with the Havnus in hand, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. Being a threat, rather. And here comes the Collide Heart. Yeah, it's definitely awkward because they have Dragostepelia, because now obviously I'm going to activate Mirror Jade, but then, you know, Dragostepelia just negates the Mirror Jade. But even though it's awkward, it's not the end of the world here. Things look a little dicey, but this is definitely still a board we can come back from. We are going to take a good bit of damage, but the only life point that matters is the last one. As long as we have that, we still have plays. Opponent's going to go for a Dweller here. So here, okay, I'm actually a little bit confused about this. I don't know why my opponent didn't go for a Dweller before the battle phase. They should have realized that they didn't have lethal anyway. If they had gone for Dweller and then Zeus, like, I would have been screwed. I don't know how I would have played through all, like, this board and a Zeus. But the rest of this board, I'm pretty certain I can pretty reasonably play through. Yeah, they don't have any shufflers in their graveyard, so I'm not concerned about that. I think we do know that that face-down card is Celiac. I'm pretty sure they did, in fact, end up searching that at some point during this turn. Maybe they didn't, though. Huh, okay, maybe they, wow, they actually didn't. I guess I just assumed they had Celiac, but yeah, if my opponent had Zeus in addition to this in board, it would have been a lot more difficult for me to out, so I do think that was a misplay on my opponent's part to not Dweller during the main phase and then battle with the Nyx's monster, so. During in phase, Albion's going to grab me a Branded in red from the deck, and then we'll pass it over to our opponent. This is why I wish I had Albion Addis. I would have much rather sent that than the second Albion there. Opponent's going to draw Phase Dweller, that's fine. I'm going to activate the Branded Lost before going for Branded Fusion, fusing the Tragedy and the Albaz once again from deck in order to go for Lubellion. Going to activate Lubellion's effect, pitching my other Despian Tragedy, and then chain block it with the Branded Lost for the Mercourier search here. Lubellion's going to put back a couple of things from the graveyard in order to make myself another Mirror Jade. Thankfully, we do have that Albion to put back there, so we get to keep the Lubellion on board as some potential extra, I guess kind of just an extra body to fuse with here, as now we're going to go for Guardian Chimera, utilizing the Branded in red, and because Despain Tragedy was banished and did not go to the graveyard, I do actually get to search with it here. And Dramaturge gets to come out as well. That's why I like Dramaturge so much. Branded Lost, also super duper good here, preventing my opponent from being able to respond to my effects, you know, when I fusion summon and such. So we get to pop in one of their monsters, Mirror Jade away the Collide Heart, go to battle phase. Guardian Chimera is going to battle over the Dweller because of Branded in red, it cannot attack directly. But I get to smack my opponent directly with everything else, which is going to be enough to win the duel. So, again, you know, that's a situation where, against Tier Limits, it looked like, wow, your opponent just actually got to do everything Tier Limits want to do. How could Branded Despia possibly keep up? As you can see, pretty easily, and our hand, honestly, wasn't even particularly impressive. I mean, it had Branded Fusion, obviously that's pretty good, but beyond that, you know, and to be fair, this is Branded Despia, like, having Branded Fusion and access to it is pretty par for the course. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a particularly spectacular hand, but we still didn't have a problem playing through our opponent's tier limit board, and then OTKing on the crackback on turn 3. So, yeah, I think this deck is still extremely strong. We have a couple more games to showcase. Let's go and take a look at those. Alright, so we have Pendulum is going to be our next opponent. And this game I remember, this game in particular is going to show off just how much disruption Branded Despia can potentially put out. Opening hand's actually looking really good. I actually really like a hand like this. Going to use Frightfur Patchwork to do a bit of deck thinning, grabbing both Poly and Edge Imp Chain, and then we get to use Allure to do even more deck thinning, and we get to banish that Edge Imp Chain if nothing else there. We actually managed to top into a That Grass Looks Greener, so I'm going to go ahead and fire that off. Milling a lot of cards there. I'm going to activate Despain Tragedy, and that's it. You might have noticed I milled both Kelbek and Agido, but as always, as ever, I don't think that blind going first, no matter what deck you're playing, tier element or not, you can activate millers going first, unless it's like you're literally only a place to get it twisted. In a situation like this, where I have like a swath, a plethora of additional plays, there's no reason to activate the millers here to like maybe high roll a little bit and then also give my opponent a chance to just like completely play out their whole deck. Like, no, there's just no reason for it. So not activating either of those. I'm just going to go ahead and normal summon this Aluber, get to grab Branded Lost once again. I was thoroughly impressed by Branded Lost in this play session. I definitely think I'm going to make it a point to include more of those in future builds. So gonna use Branded Diffusion, fusing with Albion because we've already activated Despian Tragedy's effect this turn. We use Branded Lost to get Mercourier for a little more extra disruption. Now, of course, we're going to use the ability to make who else but Mirajade. Gonna throw that in defense mode right over there. Albion's effect I'll activate to send the Branded Retribution. This is where Branded Retribution is actually not bad at all. I get to grab the Branded in red here. So that means I get to set 3 and I don't even have to banish my Aluber now. Although maybe I still should have. No, the reason I didn't, I remember now. The reason I didn't is because I don't have access to Ad Libitum. I didn't mill it, and I'd already used my Despian Tragedy search when it got milled. So, yeah, for that reason, we can't use Branded in red to fuse with Mirajade and then also get back the Mirajade, because again, we don't have the Ad Libitum. So I want my banish, so I'm going to keep the Mirajade on the board and not use the banish here. Plus, again, we already have access to Branded in red, so it's fine. Opponent's going to start with one of the Valance field spells, and then activate the Perform Pal Pendulum Magician, and then also the Wisdom Eye in their other zone. I'm going to chain Branded in red here, as well as special summoning Fairy Tale Snow. The reason is that I want to make Guardian Chimera, but as I stated before, I don't want to use Mirajade because I don't have Ad Libitum and I can't get it back if I do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Fairy Tale Snow on my board and then add back the Tragedy, and then I'm just going to fuse these 3 kind of extra monsters and use that to make Guardian Chimera. And the reason we put Fairy Tale Snow in particular on the board is because now I can destroy 2 cards on the field. I'm going to blow up my opponent's Pendulum Scale to stop them from playing. And then we get a couple of surges off of Tragedy and Branded Loss as well. Incidentally, so I'm just going to grab Springans Kitt, and then I'll use Tragedy to get Ad Libitum for potential follow-up plays. Guardian Chimera gets to draw Maxx, which is pretty ridiculous, and blow up their scale, but the opponent actually has another scale in their hand. As soon as they set it, I'm just going to fire off the Maxx, just to make sure I have it, even though they're not going to Pendulum Summon just yet. Can never be too careful, so after using Wisdom Eye, now I imagine they're going to drop a Pendulum Summon here. Yep. But I'm definitely not out of disruption, not by a long shot. I still have Mirajade and Imperm and Super Poly, so when it goes to activate the Sorcerer's effect, the Pendulum Sorcerer, I'm definitely going to Imperm that to just stop them right then and there. But I definitely don't want them to make Electromite either, so I think what I'm going to do here is... oh, my opponent goes to use the Valance field spell, so now I'm going to chain the Mirajade as well as the Super Poly, because I don't want them to get rid of my Branded Lost. The Branded Lost will actually get destroyed, so... I'm fusing my Mirajade with their Odd Eyes Butler in order to make Dragostepelia. That not only removes it, but also puts an additional form of disruption on the board. And then Mirajade resolves banishing their Butler, and yeah, now I just win. Because my opponent is completely out of resources. That is just such a good showcasing of the ridiculous amount of advantage that Branded Despia can not only accumulate is what I meant to say, but not only accumulate, but then also utilize to just completely and in multiple ways over, just shut the opponent out from being able to do anything whatsoever. We do have one more duel to jump into. Let's go straight into it. And for our final game, we are going to be up against Rika Sun Avalon. It's another deck where it's definitely been a minute since I've seen it, but definitely not a bad deck by any means. Not one I've ever gotten into. It's just, I don't know. It's not that I hate the deck or anything. It just doesn't particularly appeal to me. But we take the first turn yet again. I honestly did want to get a good going second game in this video, but I just want the coin flip a lot. I don't know what else to say. God, now I feel the need to go over to the duel, not those duel logs, but the duel log where it shows the record of wins and losses, just to prove that I didn't just lose a bunch to tier limits or something. I did actually win a bunch of games in a row. I just happened to go first during them, but I don't know. To be honest, I don't really feel I need to like prove myself in that regard, so whatever. Anyway, I'm going to use Lubellion, sending my extra Tragedy. Tragedy's effect will grab the Ad Libitum. This is all, again, pretty standard fare tier limit stuff. Tier limit, wow, Jesus. Branded Despia stuff. We just have a Keldo on board in case it's tier limit. This is what I meant to say. Well, now we don't. Oh, that's right, because I wanted to fuse with the... theater, but I wanted to use the Mirror Jade effect as well to make sure we got a search too. That's right, so I had to banish Keldo for that reason. So yeah, we get to in on Dragostepelia plus the Mirror Jade, and we even, of course, get to set up Branded Red. And we also have Ash Blossom and Kelbek in hand as disruption. Blue's going to try to summon the Rika Petal during the end phase. I'm going to Mudora to put that back, and a couple of other things I'd like to recycle from my graveyard as well, like the Albion and the Branded Red there. Alright, opponent's going to draw for a turn. Now the thing about this deck is that you want to nip their combos in the bud by taking care of the Sunseed, the normal monster. Just remove it from the field as soon as it gets activated. So, opponent did bait me out with a triple attack pretty nicely here, taking my Dragostepelia. That's going to be a little annoying, but definitely not the end of the world by any means. Opponent's got a Rika Princess to counter this Ash Blossom. That's also a little annoying, but also not the end of the world. We still have this Branded Red, which we can definitely make a good amount of plays with here. Opponent's got Snowdrop the Rika Fairy, they're going to add that. Sacking off the Dragostepelia, they had to do that in order to special summon. Have they already used their normal summon this turn? They have, okay, so yeah. In response, I'm going to chain the Branded Red, because I'm pretty sure they're just going to summon the Sunseed here. And I want to summon, well, regardless if they do or don't, I want to summon Guardian Chimera to get rid of some of these monsters they bring out. And it does actually turn out to be the Sunseed. So, like I said, best way to stop this deck from playing is just get rid of that normal monster as soon as it hits the board. This is just the best vanilla monster of the game right now for its ability to make plays, literally just by itself. But the opponent, realizing that Guardian Chimera was just going to stomp their flower before it got a chance to bloom, ultimately decided to just concede there. So that's going to do it for these games. Yeah, like I said, we had a lot of good... They were all going first games, to be fair. We had a lot of good games that showcase just how strong Branded Despia can be. And to be fair, even though they were all going first games, that second duel against Tier Limits, we did still have to fight through their board pretty fiercely anyway. So that does also showcase that the deck does still have a good bit of ferocity that it can fight through an established board and still pull off a win there. But yeah, it's going to go ahead and do it for this one. So let us just now move to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is Xlex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.